I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, August the 25th, brought to you in part by Toromox, by Norbrook, the Moxie with the Moxie, the first generic Cydectin injectable solution. You can expect the same weight gain advantage that you're used to with Cydectin, but now at a lower cost. For more information, go to norbrook.com. Cattle succumb to Midwestern heat. There's been significant loss of cattle with this heat dome that seems to have been parked over the midsection of the country here for most of the week. And we've seen a lot of loss in the southern plains at times, but like last year, it was just in certain areas where we would have some heat and humidity in one little spot. We'd lose significant amounts of cattle in maybe just a few feedlots. But this time, it was more up into the Midwest and the northern plains. Just severe heat and humidity, which put your heat index levels up very, very high. And I don't think it was any individual lot, but there was numerous lots in Nebraska and Iowa and all around that country there that had significant losses. Of course, nobody's standing up to really say how much they lost in any one place. I've heard of several hundred being lost in certain feedlots, but I think we can expect that most of the lots in that part of the country, up in the northern plains and the Midwest, they lose from 1 to 2% of their population in the lots. That's significant. But on top of that, which might be even worse, is most all your lots were experiencing at least 1 to 2% weight loss on those cattle. I mean, the heat was just unbearable up in that part of the country most of this week. It's anybody's guess what the total head counts are. I don't think we'll ever find out exactly what those are, but there were significant losses when they were trying to truck those cattle to the packers. And I heard of several trucks that had several deads on the truck. When they got them there, the truckers were saying that they were having a hard time keeping the cattle up when they were loading them and trying to get the cattle up when they got there. And then sometimes they would go down, they couldn't get them up. And, by the time they got them off, it was the same as the death loss there. But that is really tough, especially when you look at what those cattle are bringing, what they're worth. But we just hate to lose cattle like that. Anytime anybody would say that they lost some significant head counts of cattle, then that puts the focus on them. And it's not that they were doing anything wrong. It's just the heat. It's unbearable, and the cattle can't take it. But you look at the losses. That's just fewer cattle that the packers are going to have there. We are seeing just a small uptick in the amounts of market-ready cattle that we have right now. It's going to be short-lived. The packers have been loading up for that. They've been cutting kills. They've been backing off buying any negotiated cattle, just waiting for some bigger numbers on the show list, which we started to see in the last week or two. But I think with this amount of weight loss, the amount of death loss that we saw, and the grading is going to be poorer also. So it's going to make these packers get a little more hungry here, trying to find some high-grading cattle here that are ready to go. But, we just can't overlook that. And it was really, really bad. And we hate to hear that. And we feel for anybody that lost cattle up there in the northern plains and in the Midwest. We think that the extreme heat is starting to fade off to the east. Look out, you guys in the eastern Corn Belt. We know you've been having it this week too, but you've got more days of it than we do here in the central part of the country. We saw the wind start to stir here later in the week, which helps just stir the air up a little bit, making it a little bit easier for the cattle to get by. But we hope this is the last week that we're going to see this extreme heat, at least enough to make the cattle suffer. But we're seeing lighter numbers of cold storage. This week we saw a report come out that said boneless beef cold storage, at least for July, it was slightly higher, 1.6% higher than the previous month. but that is not what is typical. Normally this time of the year you're seeing a lot of kill cows go in, and you would see it go up as much as 4%, which is what the 5-year average is. So we did see it come up a little bit, but not as much as we would typically see it. So there's not a lot of cold storage of beef available, which should spur your packers on a little bit, but they've been so disciplined on backing the kills up, cutting back on the amount of cattle that they're purchasing, just waiting for a little bit of relief because they've been up against the red ink here. But I want to tell you about a couple of things here that happened this week that we haven't talked about. But Wilf's Cleburne County Livestock Auction in Heber Springs, Arkansas. They're a DVAuction broadcaster there. They had a fire break out in their sale early this week on sale day. And from what we've heard, they got all the cattle out. They got them to another sale, got them moved. So we didn't hear of any cattle losses there. Don't know how significant the loss is to the sale barn there. But we hope that they get that repaired and get that back going again. And just thoughts and prayers for those people that are dealing with that. Another thing here, closer to home for me, if you guys were into professional wrestling, back in the 80s, like I was when I was young. I thought it was great before we found out that it was all fake. But a professional wrestler that was big time here in Canyon, Texas, anyway, was Terry Funk. And Terry Funk was a cowboy. And Terry Funk was from the Double Cross Ranch in Canyon, Texas. If you remember him, he used to do tag team matches with his brother Dory Funk Jr. But Terry Funk indeed was from Canyon, Texas, where I reside right here. And his daughters were into horse events, and then they were into barrel racing and things like that. And when I was young, used to participate in play day events, horse events when I was a kid. And Terry Funk was always there. He was always there. He'd have his pants stuffed in his tinny llamas, and he was there helping out with the play days. But had several opportunities to be around Terry Funk, and he was a good guy. And he died this week. He had recently lost his wife here in recent years and never really recovered from that. And we think about Terry Funk here, and that doesn't have anything to do with cattle, but it's just something that I wanted to tell you about. But you guys are having a hard time finding people to finance your cattle in Texas and Oklahoma. Check out Legend Bank. Fast and efficient cattle financing. Talk to Greg Brooks or Rick Taylor there at Legend Bank. They're the top cattle lenders in North Texas, but they're not limited to North Texas. They're good for anywhere in Texas and Oklahoma. And if you guys are looking for cattle financing, somebody that understands it, somebody that appreciates it, go to legend.bank and look up Greg Brooks and Rick Taylor. Talk about your board. On Thursday, August live cattle futures recovered a bunch of what they lost this week, up $1.80 at 179.85, and I think it's all because I was telling everybody that it was $2 below where we thought that we might get any kind of trade in the Southern Plains, and $8 back of where they were trading in the Northern Plains. Of course, they weren't listening to me, but they did move it a little bit closer to what the cash market is here at Fruition there for your August contract. October was up 205 at 180.72. Your back months were all up, also up 122 to up $1.60. August feeder cattle are up 147 at 246.50. September was up 217 at 250.75. Back months were all up too, up $1.55 to up 237. And your technical analysts are telling us that we now have technical support in your cattle board. We'll see if that pans out here on Friday or early next week. Talk about your grains. December new crop corn was down 2 1/4 cents a bushel at 488 1/4. Beans were up 11 1/4 cents at 1371 3/4. Some of your guys that had ample moisture in your corn are glad to see this heat come in. It's drying the corn down in a big way, but the beans still need another drink here before they get made, guys. Kansas City hard red winter wheat for September was down 2 cents a bushel at 753. Talking about your fat cattle trade, out of your five area feeding region on a direct basis. We did see some more trade in the northern plains. We still haven't seen any trade at all to speak of in the southern plains, and we've gone back to, I guess, Friday trading and probably Friday afternoon or evening trading here this week in the southern plains. But Iowa had confirmed sales of 5,300 on Thursday, 9,000 for the week, which is still really small for them. They'll have to do more business here on Friday. But live sales on Thursday were 184 to 186. Dress sales from 292 to 295, which is about steady with what they had last week. But the live price is going to be a bit lower unless they step it up here on Friday. Nebraska sold 11,300 head on Thursday. They haven't sold many more than that for the week, but live sales in Nebraska were also 184 to 186, and dress sales from 290 to 293, which is steady to a bit lower than what they saw last week. Kansas, only 100 head confirmed on Thursday, only 150 head for the week. The only price that we saw out of Kansas negotiated was $292 on a dress basis, and that was likely on some better cattle in northern Kansas, probably going north or to a regional packer. Texas did not have any negotiated sales on a direct basis. Talk about the Fed Cattle Exchange again. They did have cattle listed there in the southern plains, and they did have some bidding on some commodity cattle, just straight up commodity cattle, and straight up negotiated in Kansas. Now the Fed Cattle Exchange, they bid up to 180 and a quarter on one particular lot of attractive commodity cattle in Kansas, but they had the reserve set at 182. Like I told you on the previous visit, you'll get that reserve down there where they've been trading or close to that. Then once they get in there and they know they're going to get the cattle, they'll start bidding a little bit more, but the reserve was at 182 on those cattle, so we didn't see any trade there. Box beef cutout values were a little bit higher again on Thursday. Choice cuts up 58 cents at 317.63. Selects up 32 cents at 291.91. Your slaughter, keeping fairly close pace with last week's disappointing slaughter, but a bit back from a year ago. But 488,000 harvested up through the first 4 days of the week. That's 1,000 less than last week, 10,000 less than the same week a year ago. Your actual slaughter information come back for the week ending August the 12th. Had your average dressed steer carcass weight at 901. That was up 6 pounds from the previous report. But talk about what else is going on. Performance livestock analytics. Performance beef is as easy to use as your cell phone. You can simplify feeding, performance, and health in one easy place. For more information there, go to performancelivestockanalytics.com. Talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DVAuction. Late in the day on Thursday, was sitting at 243.71 based on an 800-pound steer. That was down $1.26 compared to the end of Wednesday's trade, and it's all on lighter receipts. We just didn't see hardly any decent feeder cattle auctions on Thursday. Most of them were up into the Midwest and northern plains, and it was just too hot to market the cattle. The guys weren't wanting to get them ready earlier in the week, and we just haven't seen any runs. I mean, we went from 14,000 head to start the week in that real-time index pool all the way down to 8,700 on Thursday. So that's significant loss in the pool of the 7-day moving average so far this week. But just hardly any runs to speak of, and not well tested anywhere. Farmers and Ranchers Livestock in Salina, Kansas only had 850 head for the regular cattle auction on Thursday. Market was not well tested. Winter Livestock in Pratt, Kansas, only 700 head, not well tested there. You go up into South Dakota, Mitchell Livestock Marketing in Mitchell, South Dakota, only 700 head, not well tested there. Not that they didn't have some impressive quotes, but just not well tested market. Your NationalBeefWire stick-out sale of the day was on lighter receipts also, but Columbus Sales Pavilion in Columbus, Nebraska did have 1,000 head of feeders there. They had 277 head of 8 weights in their sale. They averaged 871 pounds with a weighted average price of $249.18. Pretty dang respectable there. On the heifer side, they had 260 head of 8 weight heifers. They had a weighted average weight of 852 pounds. Weighted average price of $238.69 is where a lot of sale barns are selling their steers weighing in the 8s. Give you some individual quotes. How about Columbus Sales Pavilion? Like I just talked about, an individual quote was 119 head of 881 pound steers, bring 256. Now that's no weaker, guys. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere on Thursday in your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Mitchell Livestock Marketing on lighter receipts, but they did have one set of thin black steers, big steers, 63 head of them weighed 935 and bring 253. And that's your feeder flash for Friday.